The pitch black darkness, the deathly grace, the old refined arrogance, the fangs, and most importantly, the blood. Put them all together, and what do you get? The lovely vampire, of course. Over the centuries, the concept of the vampire has altered or changed with the times. But to see how it has actually changed, we need to start from the beginning. Egypt. Seems like a very unlikely place for a vampire, huh? Well, it's actually not that far off. Since the dawn of humanity, many cultures have had myths about evil blood-sucking monsters. One of the earliest vampire myths, a creature called the Icamero, was first created by the Egyptians and shared with the Assyrian and the Babylonians. People of Mesopotamia lived in a terrible terror of these nocturnal creatures that would stalk innocent victims and creatures. In fact, one of the first facts concerning vampires, according to Igna Radzintori in her article The Vampires of Anne Rice, was actually a magic spell written around 400 BC. It was allegedly written by a mother in order to protect her children from the Ikamaru, a type of vampire spirit. Ikamaru were created when a person experienced one of the following deaths: a violent or premature death by being murdered, possibly in a battle, dying at a very young age, dying before love could be fulfilled, dying in pregnancy, drowning, starvation, giving improper liberation to God, and being improperly buried. As you can see, there are many ways you could end up having your spirit return to Earth and prison back in your rotten corpse. Unlike modern day vampires, these creatures actually set off the life force of people by tapping into their aura. Other cultures that contain a similar vampire legends include Mesopotamia, Persia, Greek, and Indian. Now, the literature of vampire as we know it today began around the 1800s. First vampire story in English was John Poe's The Vampire. Notice spelled for Y, not an I. The foundations of vampire fiction are found in the Bram Stoker's Dracula, written in 1897. Much of the themes from Dracula are still present in modern vampirism, notably those of gender archetypes and gender sexuality. Orson Welles once said that if there hadn't been women, we'd still be squatting in the cave eating raw meat because we made civilization to impress our girlfriends. According to a 1999 scholarly paper written by Leo Wyman, the role of women in society has a tendency to quell male aggression. It is the nature of women to impose a mothering effect on setting and reinforcing boundaries on what is considered appropriate male behavior. Femininity is the foil to the wild, aggressive, and animalistic nature of masculinity. Consequently, the role of women in such fiction is that of salvation. It is women who save men in society from destruction. This overall concept is portrayed in Dracula, particularly in the relationship between the title character and Mina Harker. In the novel, Dracula seeks to maintain a gentlemanly composure around Mina. In his attempts to impress Mina, Dracula must fight his animalistic vampire identity. In the end, it is Mina who kills Dracula and thus saves humanity from his destruction. Dracula also illustrates the repressed sexuality in the Victorian era. In those times, sexual pleasure was defined in exclusively male terms. Male sexuality was usually associated with dominance, whereas female sexuality was associated with submissiveness. Vampirism is thought to be a form of sexuality that is taboo but innate in human desire. It is Dracula providing his victims to express violent sexuality. Among his victims are his three brides, a group of women who very much resemble a harem. His bride refers to Dracula as a master, yet he is never referred to as their husband. Moreover, Mina represents the concept of the powerless virgin, according to Wyman. Mina is associated with asexuality, dressed in schoolmistress's garments, and sexually conservative. There is a scene in the novel in which she is shown a book of pornographic images and expresses repugnance. Although morally robust, she is defenseless, as she must be constantly protected by men, whether it's either her fiancé, Jonathan Murray, or Dracula's nemesis, Dr. Van Helsing. The Vampires Chronicles by Anne Rice are a collection of novels that go through the existence of several vampires, how they were created, and how they struggled with immortality. The first book in this series, Interview with a Vampire, is a story about a vampire named Lewis, and is narrated by him as he talks to a reporter named Daniel, and how he was reborn into the darkness. One of the most charismatic and elegant vampires that is introduced in this story is the vampire Lestat, who later goes on to become the main characters of some of the other books. Before he was spirited away and forcibly turned into a vampire, he ran away from his noble French family and tried to become an actor on the Parisian stage. After his transformation, he immediately embraced his newfound power, but had issues with leaving behind his family and best friend Nikki. He sends money to his family and buys Nikki a very expensive violin, but stays away from all of them so they won't find out what he really is. Lestat is beautifully elegant and loves what he is. He also questions the morality of his actions and the actions of the other immortals around him. Anne Rice makes characters you really sympathize with and believe in. She makes them people that, if they were real, you would want to meet them. Although not in a dark alleyway with a cell phone that has a low battery in the middle of the night. While Stephenie Meyer creates perfect, unrealistic beings, Anne Rice creates whole, complex organisms. Reginald Daughtry names the traits that makes Anne Rice vampires so wonderful. Quote, they are sensuous, their suffering and agonizing, as well as their love and passion for life and living, as much as one can live while being dead. That attracts readers and keeps them coming for more. The point is, Rice's creations are realistically human, unlike Stephenie Meyer's, who are dull things with a semblance of morality. If you really read into Twilight, the only good thing that her vampires do is that they feed off animals instead of people. With Rice's vampires, they actually band together to destroy Alaska, the first vampire that been created, because she's planned to destroy the world by killing 99% of the world's male population and taking over the rest. They fight against her, knowing that if she's killed, they will die also because each of them are connected to actual life force. This is true morality. This is why people keep going back to Anne Rice's novels. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is about Buffy Summer, a high school student who lives in a town called Sunnydale. Sunnydale is built on a hill, so it attracts a lot of vampires and other demons. Buffy is the Slayer. The Slayer is a chosen girl who is given superhuman abilities. She is stronger and more agile than any order of human. The Slayer also has natural instincts that guide her when fighting vampires. It is the Slayer's job to give the world a fighting chance against vampires. There is only one Slayer at a time. When the Slayer dies, another Slayer is chosen by fate and is given the superhuman powers of the Slayer. Throughout the series, Buffy struggles with her duties as the Slayer and her desire to live an ordinary life. In the series, she falls in love with a vampire named Angel. Angel is not an ordinary vampire. He was cursed by gypsies to regain his soul. At one point, Angel loses his soul and becomes evil. Buffy is forced to send him out. He later returns, but he realizes that he's not good for Buffy, so he leaves her. Later on in the series, a former enemy vampire named Spike is implanted with a chip that prevents him from harming humans, but can still fight vampires and other demons. He decided to fight alongside Buffy and get vampires. He starts to fall in love with her, and she does develop feeling for him too, but she cannot trust him because he is only good because of that chip in his head. In order to bring Buffy's up, Spike needs to deal with demons to remove the chip and to get a soul instead, which allows him to be naturally good. After this, him and Buffy both fall in love with each other, but it does not last. At the end of the series, he allows himself to be sacrificed in order to destroy the town of all vampires. Buffy accomplished her goals by herself. She does not rely on anybody to protect her. She kills hundreds of vampires all by herself. She played by her own rules. She did not let anyone tell her what to do. Before Buffy the Vampire Slayer came out, females were often depicted as the damsels in distress who needed a knight in shining armor to save them. Buffy never fit that stereotype. Buffy was one of the first strong female badass on TV, which it paved the way for more strong female characters in fiction. By the time Twilight came out, the damsel in distress stereotype was dying out. However, instead of following the trend of making strong female characters, Stephenie Meyer decided to bring back the damsel in distress. The main character, Bella Swan, is physically weak to the point where she's a total klutz, and she often needs her life to be saved. But not only is she physically weak, she's also extremely emotionally weak. Bella fell in love with Edward, despite the fact she barely knew who he was. And it later comes out he's a vampire. And he feels that he's too dangerous to be around her, so he leaves her. And then, when he leaves her, Bella became a depressed zombie who had no point to live. And she purposely puts herself into dangerous situations because it helped her remember Edward better. Edward and Bella are supposed to be these star-crossed lovers, these soulmates. But I do not feel they really come off that way. I mean, Edward is creepy. He follows Bella home at night. He comes into her window and sleeps in her room at night and watches her sleep. That does not sound like a soulmate. That sounds like a stalker. Even in Dracula, one of the first vampire novels to ever be popularized and written such a long time ago, they had a strong female character in Mina Harker. She healed Dracula herself, even though she was a woman. And then Buffy came along, which made them one of the most powerful female characters in all time. And then Twilight comes out, another vampire novel, and they make Bella one of the weakest female characters in literature, who just fits the stereotype, damsel in distress, please someone help me, both physically and emotionally. And there you have it. This is how vampire fiction progressed and evolved over time. Now, if there's anything that we hope you take away from this video, is that don't measure up all vampire fiction to Twilight. Yes, Twilight is a new breed of vampire fiction, and some people like it. However, there are many more other vampire novels, movies, television shows, and other media that deserve attention. Thanks for watching.